Buddhism says that karma is a human's creative actions, or in other words, karma is the driving force that pushes sentient beings to the place of life. Karma is the power to preserve human life through repeated creative actions of humans into habits, and repeated habits attract us in the direction of karma. Karma leads us to wander in the 6 paths of samsara because of our habit. So life is formed thanks to all works in our body and mind. If we stop breathing and stop all circulatory activities, this body will die. So karma guides people in every breath, thought, and every speech action. It is, for example, like an arrow leaving the bowstring suddenly flies in the air thanks to the thrust. When the thrust ends, the arrow must fall. Our own life is also due to the push of karma thanks to the wind. Karma attracts the 4 external elements into the body. And also thanks to the wind of karma pushing the 4 elements in the body out. The wind of karma stops, this body also follows and disappears. So the existence of this body and the continuation of future bodies are all due to karma, and karma means there is life and there is still life. The continuation of the cycle of birth and death. Active karma gives birth to a new life for each person, so each habit and action we create every day is the karma that guides us. How you want your life to be is up to you to decide. Each person is the one who creates their own destiny, not controlled by anyone else. Gods or Buddha cannot create luck or suffering for you. We are the ones who ultimately decide our fate. Karma in general has 4 main types of karma: good karma, bad karma, near-death karma, and accumulated good karma, forming habits that will lead sentient beings to the good world. Good karma gives birth to the 3 realms of human Asura heaven. Bad karma forms habits that will lead sentient beings into the evil realm. Evil karma has 3 realms of hell, demons and animals. Among the types of karma, adultery is considered one of the deepest karmas that Buddhism often reminds us humans to stay away from. Why do you say that? Let's explore the story right here. It's about a young man born into a poor family who was once convicted of adultery, leading to extremely heavy retribution, a life like hell. But because of the good karma accumulated in the past, he learned about Buddhism and practiced transformation, so he was able to neutralize his karma and eliminate the crime of adultery. Not only that, good karma came to him, but he lived a happy and prosperous life. Endlessly lucky to become a self-made millionaire in just 2 years, a story told that is completely true. Overcoming the evil consequences of adultery, a life from hell on earth. Becoming a self-made millionaire in 2 years thanks to practicing Buddhism. The Dharma and story he shared are as follows. He recounted that in the past he never dared to think that today. Everything he achieved was thanks to the fate of practicing Buddhism today. Sitting here to recount these confessions about my life to share with everyone as motivation for all those who have a destiny to believe deeply in karma. The Buddha Dharma is so miraculous that there are no words to describe it. It could be because his karma over many lifetimes is too heavy. It could also be due to the combined karma of his family and lineage. Maybe he is a person is like a black sheep lost in a flock of white sheep to pay for the common karma that he has not yet realized, or maybe because of some reason he is the one chosen to look at the wrong person and go to the vombat to know the sadness and filth, and then advised everyone to stay away from it. The bad cause that led to his suffering was the sin of adultery, one of the heaviest sins that Buddhism often mentions in scriptures, and this karma began since he was born. His parents didn't have a child until 4 years after they got married, and within 2 years before they replaced him, His mother got pregnant once but had a miscarriage. When he was born, he was a very young child. Difficult to feed, chronically sick and suffering from many minor digestive diseases every time the weather changes. While growing up, he also had to witness many heartbreaking stories in his family. His parents were often at odds. All of his relatives were immersed in poverty because of this, so their lives were different. Often arguing with each other after each conflict broke down, the ones who suffered the most were still the children. He remembers that he often cried and begged everyone to stop beating and arguing with each other. Life was as difficult as under hell. In his childhood, he had to witness such sad scenes that made him become a withdrawn and introverted person, depressed and self-absorbed. He often wandered alone in deserted places. Once he left home and wandered through temples and cemeteries. He even slept there alone. During his middle school years, he began to be aware of his studies, so he studied very hard and became a good student admired by many people. But his family was still unstable and often quarreled with each other. His life was miserable every day and every hour. He gradually became a child with negative thoughts and a tendency to violence. This situation lasted from the last years of middle school to the end of high school. He felt the fire of desire in him begin to grow. Evil and impure actions began to appear from the example of his parents and his family, from all the causes and karma accumulated over many lifetimes, and perhaps because the virtue of himself and his family was not great enough to guide him to good things, he became a spoiled child. Rude and difficult to tell. His studies began to suffer, often dropping out of school and becoming addicted to games. Perhaps bad karma began to develop heavily from here. Although he was always in the school's selected class, perhaps his virtue still remained for everyone. The story didn't go too far. Then he skipped his first year of university because he wasn't interested in going to school. He wanted to work to make money for the family because he thought that money would solve all the problems in the family. At that time, all the thoughts in his head were dominated by bad karma. But a year later his family convinced him to decide to retake the university entrance exam and fail. After that, he moved to a strange city to study while hiding from his family. Working part-time, he did everything he could to make a living for himself. He also learned to be independent and earned scholarships every year, but a life of adultery still surrounded him, witnessing adultery scenes of thousands of people. In the neighborhood where he lived, they had sex right next to his room. Bad karma followed, causing him to enter the path of adultery, and then he knew how to masturbate and do the dirty things of adultery that I'm not comfortable sharing. Here, he is like a beast that indulges in dirty desires, living treacherously and doing sinful things to many people. Even though he looks very clean and handsome on the outside, on the inside he is completely dirty. In the first years of university, his karma did not pour out much, but by the third year of university, he began to realize that his karma was growing incredibly quickly. When he rented a house, people cheated him of his money, was evicted from his house, and his property was lost. Unfortunately, he had to sell the only motorbike that he had saved up money for so long to buy. At this time, he also had the additional burden of having to raise a younger brother in college. The pressure of life made him fall into a state of depression. Constantly stressed, no matter what he did, he broke down. Difficulties and illnesses appeared more and more. He himself was always aware of the existence of retribution, but he had not had the opportunity to meet Buddhism to learn more about it. The only luck he realized at that time was that he still had his family and people around him behind him to help him, which was the only motivation for him not to give up everything. Faced with difficulties and lack of mind, he was influenced by adultery, causing him to have many distorted and wrong thoughts. This caused bad retribution to come to him continuously. No matter what he did, he encountered difficulties until he graduated from school. Fortunately, in the accident where the truck crashed, there was a shielding material. He only suffered minor injuries, lost a finger, and saved his life. After graduating, he applied for an internship at a large agency and was retained to work there. At the beginning, he still had many difficulties at work. The retribution he had to receive was still not over yet. The constant desire for adultery cannot be restored, so all the bad things continue to happen. His family is still in discord, he can't earn enough money, he falls into debt, has to spend every penny to cover his life, and then he is arrested. Chow Viet wandered alone around the city like a homeless person for a long time. Sometime later, he met a girl who was the first time he fell in love seriously with someone who thought everything would be fine. But unfortunately, when he put all his trust in someone else, they deceived him. Pushing away the bitter tree, he collapsed and sank into suffering. Maybe karma arranged his life like that. He was stuck in thoughts and didn't know who to express it to. So in difficult times, he only knew how to go to the temple. In order to save his spiritual faith, he finally prayed for a blessing over his life, kneeling before the gods that he never knew who they were, and he also did not know if any miracles would happen. And then the COVID epidemic happened. At the end of 2019 and beginning of 2020, things became more difficult again. All of his savings were exhausted and he was unemployed. He had to do some jobs to make ends meet at that time to make money. To make ends meet for the two brothers in the city was indeed an extremely difficult task. The deadlock during the time of the severe epidemic left people in poverty. At one point, he had the thought of selling his blood for money. Selling organs for money, being a prostitute to make money are all negative thoughts, and then he tried to overcome the difficulties until the end of 2020 and early 2021, when the epidemic started to explode again. After a long period of flirting and debt, he received an inquiry from an old friend who introduced him. He worked for a company far away from home because the epidemic lasted so long that he had no debt. He decided to take this job and move to work in the wrong home. This was the turning point in his life. Here he had time to reflect more deeply on his life, return to the habit of reading books, and have the opportunity to learn about Buddhism. Although the job was difficult at first, due to economic pressure he had to make money to cover his living expenses. I lived to take care of my siblings and myself to pay off my debt, so I tried harder. During nearly a year of working away from home, I had time to separate and live a less busy life, and I started a new habit of going to healing meditation music voices, listen to Buddhist mantras to soothe the hurt in the soul. One day while resting, he accidentally surfed the internet and heard a video titled "Mantra That Will Change Your Life Forever," with the mind mantra in Tibetan Buddhism being a manipulator. After reading that title, he fell in love. He closed his eyes and listened very deeply to the quiet and pure sound, causing him to fall asleep immediately afterward. He felt that it was the most peaceful sleep he had ever had. That very day, he decided to read about the mantra. The more he learned about Tibet, the more interested he became in these things. In the following days, he often listened to Tibetan Buddhist mantras again, and perhaps this was the beginning of his first spiritual awakening. Over time, the more he learned, the more he found groups and clubs of young Buddhists practicing and volunteering in everyday life. He felt like his life had a lifeline. Buddhist groups and retreats for young people gradually helped him change his thinking and daily living habits. He began to think more positively, slow down and appreciate what he has in life. During the epidemic period when people no longer chose to live too much, many people like him began to change their habit of slowing down and had a strong spiritual awakening. The filter in him began to happen when he always had two conflicting oppositions between desire and non-desire, between good and evil, but in the environment around him at that time, there were many people who chose to return to life. Living a good life, looking for and relying on Buddhism, or finding a suitable living environment for yourself, believing in karma. This led him to change his life. He began to practice and transform both body and mind. His mind, and the more he practiced and learned, the more he was led in the right direction. He learned about mantras, chanting Buddha's name, and then learned to accept the Ksitigarbha Sutra. The deeper he went, the more his karma opened up, because his karma still remained too heavy and thick. But instead of being dissatisfied and blaming like before, he gradually realized that these are the challenges he needs to go through on the path of spiritual development. Every wind and wave that happens to him is his bad karma being eliminated. At this stage, desire still emerges to dominate his every thought and action, preventing him from practicing like the Buddha often said in the scriptures. The purpose of harassing practitioners is also to train them. At that time, his work was a little more favorable than before, but the difficulties were piling up more. He was loved and trusted by his boss, and his surrounding colleagues discriminated against his different lifestyle. They admired him and moved on. Sang hates gossiping and trying to cause harm and harass him in all sorts of ways. Work pressure from many sides makes him seek refuge in Buddhism even more. Every night he listens to mantra music, mantras, and Buddha's name for comfort. In my heart to persevere in practicing meditation, I posted every day to purify my body and mind, copying sutras and studying Buddhist scriptures to better understand cause and effect of karma. After a period of learning about Buddhism, he realized that the great benefits of Buddhism helped relieve his suffering. He began to share it with his family and parents in the countryside, hoping that they would gradually transform so that their lives would be less painful. More and then fate came to lead him to a vegetarian life. He started to practice vegetarianism, but it seemed to be much more difficult than he thought at first. His body was not used to it, but because of his compassion, he gradually increased. So his determination to become a vegetarian became stronger and stronger. His colleagues increasingly shunned him. The senator spoke ill of life away from home. There was no one around him who could sympathize and support the pressure from work and toxic people around him, causing him to fall into despair many times. One night after he copied the Ksitigarbha Sutra and meditated, he lay down and thought about his life. He burst into tears because of the mistakes he had made. He cried because this repentance felt like it was too late. He cried because of his fate for so many years. Drifting to the steppe, he prayed for a door to liberate himself, asked for forgiveness from Ksitigarbha and Avalokitesvara, asking them to guide him to change his life, change his workplace, change his life. His life is less arduous and painful. The next morning, unexpectedly, a miracle happened to him. A friend who had not contacted him for a long time, who knew him in the industry, called to ask about his work situation. That person wanted to invite him to the city to work. After that incident, he began to believe more deeply in Buddhism and continued to write sutras, practice meditation and repentance regularly every day in preparation for moving back to the city to work. After returning to the city to work again, his life continued to be challenged by his new boss, who let him go out to eat, sing, drink, and play with girls, but he immediately refused. This made everyone's first impression of him. His boss seemed to hate him very much and even wanted to fire him, but he tried to focus on his daily work and persevere in practicing meditation, copying the Ksitigarbha Sutra, Repentance Sutras, and reading the Great Compassion Mantra and Shurangama Mantra all the time. Wherever possible, he did not look outward and pay as much attention to people's suggestions as before, only focusing on developing himself, and his inner strength began to gradually increase the stability in his soul that made him respect everyone. Facing all external difficulties became easier and his desires were also significantly reduced. After a period of time working in a new company, perhaps because of the magnetic energy of his practice, he began to have an influence that made him able to change his living environment. People ate less, drank less, sang and lived less. Being more honest with each other, my new boss gradually changed and liked me more. He trusted me with more work because I could do the job and understood that the less lust, the more intelligence. The more a person is trusted, the more luck begins to appear. After a period of practice, most of his bad relationships fell away. Good quality relationships began to appear more often. He had less pressure to face toxic people, toxic environments, toxic thoughts. Instead, his life has prospered, more joy and happiness has come to him. In August 2022, he received a phone call from a friend in the same industry who had not talked to him for a long time. That friend realized that he had changed a lot because of practicing Buddhism and keeping the precepts. The front man was trustworthy, so that friend asked him to cooperate on a project with him because his company did not have anyone qualified to work with him, so he invited him to invite the boss to work with him after the project. That was the first time in his life that he received a commission of more than 500 million VND. After receiving that amount of money, he couldn't even believe it. It was the truth. He was both happy and worried and always asked himself questions, wondering why that surprise was so big. He continued to practice vegetarianism, and thanks to that money, he went to charity and released more animals to review all the mistakes he had made. During that time, he learned and researched more deeply about the things he had done. Books to change destiny such as Lu Pham Tu Wan Book, Tianan and Tak Tien. The more you practice your life, the more you go in the right direction, a worry-free life. You sleep deeper, only sleeping for about 5 hours a day. But he doesn't feel tired. Every morning he teaches himself at 5 o'clock to meditate so that his work can be more convenient. In the morning, he meditates at noon, eats a vegetarian meal in the evening, reads repentance prayers and copies Buddhist scriptures. On weekends, he has free time to release animals. Life increasingly peaceful. In November 2022, luck once again came to his life. 3 projects he was introduced to from friends brought back to the cooperation company a commission of up to 1,600,000,000 VND. No, I couldn't believe my eyes that a person from a poor background who had been in a difficult situation for many years due to adultery could now achieve such great achievements. And by TET 2023, good luck will also come to you. He went to get his hair cut at a familiar salon. After chatting with the boss for a while, he was introduced to a girl. At first, he hesitated because he thought about the stains on his life, having committed adultery in the past. He still had a lot of guilt about himself, but then he thought more positively about making a new friend, even though it was something he should do right now. So he finally decided to take the initiative to get to know her. Unexpectedly, the fate that was arranged for him was like fate. The girl introduced to him was the daughter of the salon owner's friend. She was 4 years younger than him and was studying at university, and like him, she shared the same interest in practicing meditation, volunteer and even registered to be a volunteer for a Buddhist organization like him. He and she got to know each other for about 4 months and then decided to get married because they had many similarities between the girl's family. Was also a wealthy Buddhist family and they loved him very much. When he and that girl got married, his wife's family supported him a lot, lending him and his wife more money for business and so on. Luck continues to come to him. Hoa Thuan and his wife work together, do business and practice together. In the process of sharing the story with me in the early days of 2024, he also just welcomed his 2 twin children. He and his career are constantly improving, becoming a self-made millionaire at the age of 30. Living a fulfilling and extremely happy life because believing in the miracle of Buddha Dharma has changed his life forever, and that is the story. The real life of a friend I love very much. You see, adultery is the deepest karma, and even so, all karma in this life can be changed. By believing in the Buddha's teachings and practicing transformation, to neutralize karma, the first thing you need to change is the habit that creates your karma. Buddhism only teaches that sentient beings can liberate themselves from suffering, but the castle of liberation must be built on a foundation of self-transformation practice. To be liberated, you must first achieve enlightenment yourself. Just like a doctor who examines us tells you the cause of the disease and gives you a prescription, your job is to believe in the doctor who examined you and have to take that medicine yourself, otherwise everything will become worse. It's meaningless if because you are too devoted to worshipping the Buddha, worshipping the Dharma is like worshipping the doctor who prescribed the medicine for you and you only bring that medicine back to the altar in the morning. Put your hands together, 3 prostrations, 3 prostrations. Praying that your illness will be cured is an extremely unrealistic wish. You must be clearly aware of the harmful effects of your illness. You need to trust your doctor and take medicine while also thinking about it. Resolutely change old habits to extinguish the source of such disease. Only then will you succeed in curing yourself. The second thing you need to change to turn your karma around is to develop compassion and wisdom in your mind. What we call karma, whether it is accumulated karma, can all be turned around when we have compassion and wisdom protect us. This is very practical. Compassion in the heart can protect us, which means that when you live in an environment where people around you have different karma and interact with each other, then developing love and compassion within ourselves and around us will be the foundation that surrounds us. Of course we can rely on our family, friends, and loved ones around us based on our talents and status. But they are all impermanent and can change at any time. But there is one thing that is not impermanent. The practice of spreading good karma develops compassion and wisdom within yourself. If you continuously develop good deeds right now and every day, you have built a shield to protect yourself from harm. Events and therefore any karma that brings forth any fear that comes, whether it is imaginary fear or whether there is fear due to past experiences, we can deal with it by living fully in present moment, by virtue, by concentration, by wisdom, and by sowing seeds of love and compassion. Nothing can make you afraid, like the friend told in the story above. His practice of fasting, copying Buddhist sutras, reading the Repentance Sutra, is all aimed at developing compassion, wisdom, and inner strength. It is not an empty religious ritual. It is a way to purify oneself. Bad karma is the most effective, and it is also a way to protect you from the bad karma environment around you. As the Buddha also said about the concept of mindfulness, every conscious action in every moment is an action created to protect ourselves, so whatever bad karma happens will not dominate and control us. Yes, so the only way to change your karma is to turn the seeds you plant in the present into factors that protect you in the future, because our karma follows us. Just like the image and shadow, every day we practice in the direction of precepts, concentration and wisdom with kindness and compassion, then it will appear and protect our lives. I would like to pause this video here. Thank you for watching. If you find this video useful, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. See you again in the next videos.